Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Join me today. He's the host of the Spark in the Dark podcast, former WWE Superstar, former football player. It's Dan Matha. How are you doing today, Dan?
I'm doing great, Alex. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
Oh, damn, right to the beginning. So I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. I grew up there till I was like 18. I come from, kind of a blue collar, humble beginnings. I had young parents, right? Parents were real young when they had me, so it was like babies having babies. And so I come from like the lower socioeconomic bracket, right, of here in the United States of America, at least. And I always like to, one of the easy ways to kind of paint a picture for people is like I'm a kid who grew up in a trailer park across the street from the projects. So it's a crazy neighborhood to grow up in a trailer park across the street from the projects. Like the things you would see or the stories that I could tell would just, you wouldn't believe them if you didn't live through them. But so, with that came a lot of dysfunction, a lot of craziness, but also through the craziness and that dysfunction, I developed quite a bit of grit, perseverance, and like hustle, ingenuity. Like my pops, I've met a lot of wild people in my life. My pops is probably the most wildest human being I've ever met. But one of the things about him that I admire is his work ethic and his hustle. Now, like I said, he's wild, so some of like maybe his follow through or decision making could be questioned, but his intensity and his work ethic were something that I admired and something that I took with me. And so for me, I gravitated to sports. I was like the black sheep in my family, which you wouldn't expect because everybody's like me in my family. Everybody's big as hell, everyone's, my brother's the shortest one and he's 6'3". So, wow. Yeah. So, and, they all would have been good athletes if they decided to be good athletes. It just wasn't their cup of tea, but I was the black sheep and I was the athlete in the family. And I gravitated towards football. And to me, football was my way out. I was like my ticket. I fell in love with the game. I watched it. I remember the first time ever watching football was like the 96 Super Bowl, San Francisco 49ers versus the San Diego Chargers. And I just was like enamored by the TV in this game. And I was just like, what is this? I want to do this. And so I, eventually ended up getting onto a football team, started playing football. And so before all of like the accolades came for football, initially I sucked at football. I like the first month and a half, 2 months of playing football, I just got my ass kicked every day. It was rough. It was like a rough 2 months. And then there was like this moment that kind of clicked. And from that moment, things kind of snowballed and allowed me to kind of grow into the player that I ended up becoming. But I, started excelling, started getting a lot of notoriety. I was like I said, I was a big kid. I mean, in 6th grade, when I first started playing football, I was 6'1". Oh, wow. By the time I hit 8th grade, I was like 6'4". Then I started, really seriously lifting weights in the 8th grade as well. I kind of started dabbling in weightlifting before that, like the 6th grade, but like, benching and curling and like no program or anything, like just me and my boys playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 while listening to Eminem's Marshall Mathers in the bedroom while seeing who could curl more. But then in the 8th grade, I found I had like a serious lifting program. And then between my growth spurts and then just becoming obsessed with training, I just started growing, because those are, especially for men, for boys, like that's the time to really start training, because like you're going through puberty and you're just getting like an obscene amount of testosterone pumped through you. So it's just like a great time to optimize all of that. So I started training, started playing, obsessing, just pouring all myself into football and training, and started, like I said, excelling. Started getting looked at by colleges heavily. Then I just, as each year high school went on, I kept getting better, and the notoriety kept coming in. I was one of the top ESPN players in the country at that time. Had a bunch of schools I could have went to. I ended up narrowing it down to the University of Pittsburgh. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and there was like, a lot of buzz. Pennsylvania boy going to a Pennsylvania school. I was like predicted to play pretty early, which, especially for my position as an offensive lineman, is uncommon. Usually you're not playing right away as an offensive lineman. But life had its own plans for me. I had surgery. I had to have 2 shoulder surgeries right away as a freshman. And then that was the first time I didn't have football in my life. And I was like kind of I was kind of left to deal with my own, with myself without that outlet. Right. And at the time I didn't realize it, but being older and being able to look back was like, I had a lot of trauma that I wasn't even aware of that I needed to deal with. And it was like manifesting in a lot of ways, real crazy behavior. And some of it is just young, insecure dude shit. You know what I mean? And some of it's just, trauma of, some of the life circumstances I grew up in, and just really not knowing how to handle it, other than, me being kind of like a very extreme person, and then doing very extreme things, right? Whether it was partying and other nefarious acts, right? That got me in trouble. So so then I got into the doghouse and I got a little bit of trouble. And then, the injuries kind of set me back, and I ended up being at Pitt for 3 years and not playing.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And then, so it was like real shot to the gut, because it was like, hey, as this Division I football player, real high hopes, and now I'm 3 years in. I've got 2 years of eligibility left, and like the writing is on the wall that I'm probably not going to play here. And I was in a low point of, one, because of football. 2, this girl I was dating, it was like the first love of my life, very serious relationship. Her and I broke up. And so it was like a double whammy, like trying to deal with both of those things. So then I put all my shit on Craigslist and was going to sell it, buy a motorcycle, and like drive out to California. And I don't know what I was going to do. Something, I had some sort of, I was going to figure it out as I go or something like that. But then I had some, my rational thought fairy came to me and was like, hey, what do you really want to do here? And I was just like, well, as long as I can remember, the passion and the dream was I was going to be an NFL football player, all pro, Hall of Fame, one of the greatest of all time, make millions of dollars, ride off into the sunset. Like that was the vision in my mind. Right. Well, now I'm here in college, not even playing. And so it's like, well, we're not even close to that. So like, well, what can we do here? And it's like, well, I still want to play football. I love this game. And at the very least, I want to be able to say that I played in university. I wanted to say that I played on a collegiate football team. So let's kind of get rid of this thought of things that we can't control. I can't control the NFL, getting to the NFL. I can't control making millions of dollars. I can't control getting into the Hall of Fame, being an all-pro. All of that is way too far down the road to even be worrying about that. So like, let's just focus on what we can control. And what we can control is playing for a team, a university. So here's your decision. You either transfer to another Division I school, lose a year of eligibility, and then play one more year, or you transfer to a Division II school where you don't have to sit out at all, and then you would have 2 full years of eligibility. Now, that at the time was kind of a tough decision because it was like there's this status that comes with being a Division I football player.
Yep.
Right? It's like, yo, you're a D1 football player. And so it's almost like, oh, you're less, like you're not, like I said, that status. And then so it's an ego thing. So it was just like, well, what did you say was your goal here? Your goal was to play football on a collegiate team. It wasn't to play on a Division I team. It wasn't to play on a, D2 team, D3. It was just to play. What put you in the best position to play? Because, there's a lot of variables that come into play. Say you transfer to a Division I school and you sit out 1 year, and then that next year you've got 1 year to make it happen. You could get hurt. Happens all the time in football. It's a brutal sport. Yeah. Or, you could get beat out by somebody else, or, you're not one of the coach's guys that they brought in. So, one of their guys plays over. There's just a lot of variables. So I just was like, I don't want to lose a year. That's my year. I don't want anybody taking anything from me. So I was like, you know what? This has got to swallow my pride, like this ego thing here, worrying about the status, right? So I made the decision to transfer to Division II school to finish out my, collegiate career. I ended up transferring to Indiana University of Pennsylvania. It's about an hour east of Pittsburgh. And from there, things started turning. Like it was just like new school, playing, learning a new offense. Football was fun again. It was awesome. I was thriving. I was about to play. Everything was looking great. And then I shoot myself in the foot, right? I'm still not over some of those past traumas, those nefarious acts, those inner demons that I was dealing with, right? At my birthday party during the summer, long story short, some wildness takes place. I end up falling off of a building, break my pelvis. So, yeah. So I fall off this building and I break my pelvis, and I now am like, I put myself in this position to start get myself out of this hole that I was in, kind of get myself back on track, stop being my own worst enemy. And then I shoot myself in the foot again. Now, this is something that like, you can't really, there's no one to blame here. No one to blame. Like, I can't say it wasn't a coach, wasn't a situation, wasn't in this, wasn't that. It was me being a dumbass. It was me making a poor decision for what? No. For a good time, to be cool in front of my friends. Now I'm paying the price, right? So that year was a scratch. Then fast forward, finally get healthy, sit out a year, finally get healthy, play my last year. And at this point, between that and, I also ran into a little bit of academic trouble for the first time. So between getting hurt and the academic trouble, I was just like, it was like bam, bam. And then it was like, I had to have this like coming to Jesus moment with myself, where it was like, I couldn't bullshit anybody anymore. And in particular, I couldn't bullshit myself anymore. I was like, yo, I've got to take extreme accountability. Like all of these things that are going wrong in your life right now are your fault. You are making those decisions. You're putting yourself in position to have these things happen to you, whatever they are, right? So it was like, what are you going to do? Are you going to fold, you're going to fold your hand, call it a day, walk off, live a long life full of regret? Or are you going to suck it up, do what you need to do to make things right, recover, get your grades right the ship, kind of fix some of those relationships with your teammates and your coaches that you tarnished because of your dumbassery? Like, are you going to do those things? Are you going to be a bigger, the bigger person? Are you going to be a mature human being? Do those things necessary to kind of to right this ship? And so, that's the decision that I made. And I was just like, from this point forward, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot. Someone else is going to have to shoot me in the foot.
Yeah.
So from that point, I'd always been a solid student, but to be honest, school never really did much for me. Outside of a couple particular classes here and there that I really gravitated towards. But from that point on, I excelled. I was just like, one of the mantras that I took with me from that point on going forward is how you do anything is how you do everything. And I was just like, you put all this work into training your body and being a great football player, but then you neglect all of these other areas of your life because you don't deem them important or as important. But that's like that's you not understanding that there is no separation. There's no separation from one aspect of your life to the next. They're all interconnected. And to neglect one aspect of your being is to neglect all aspects of your being. So how you do anything is how you do everything. So it's like, if I'm going to go to school, I'm going to take the best notes I can take.
Yeah.
I'm going to read that chapter the best that I can read that chapter. When I go and take this test, I'm going to take this test the best way I can do. When I take out the trash, I'm going to take the trash out the best way that I can. Everything. It can go to anywhere. It seeps into the rest of your life. So I just held myself to that extreme accountability. And, that year, things just, it's crazy how much easier life got. Even though I was doing more work. And so it was, school, I'm pretty sure I had like a 4.0 during that time. Not overall, but at least, during those last 2 semesters. Then, football, that year I was All-American, Gene Upshaw Award finalist in Division II. Team went, we were 1 game away from the national championship game. It was a tremendous year for me in football, and not just like because of the accolades, but because of being able to be on that team with those guys and to play and be successful and, be a part of a group of men that were like-minded, that had a common goal. And then, all the other things that I was doing as well, outside of football, I was really excelling at as well, or forcing myself to be the best that I could be in it. And it made me a better player because of that, which then let me be a better teammate, which then let my team be better as well. And then, then I started getting, there were scouts that came to practice or that were coming to practice. I had an agent, we're preparing for the draft. And in free agency, the Bengals came calling. They wanted to bring me in, brought me in. We go through OTAs go through, and I had, the best 2 weeks of football that I had ever played, right? Just fully locked in, just physically humming, mentally humming, an accumulation of 15 years of football, just like peaking. It was just like a great feeling. And then, got an NFL jersey on, you got an NFL helmet on, right? That was what I had dreamed of since I was a little kid. And then I had, my physical, I had my shoulder came up, flagged me on the physical, and I didn't get signed by the Bengals. And then that was, that sucked. That was frustrating, but there's nothing I could do about that, right? So I was like, can't focus on that. So I'm going to go to Canada. So then I got signed by the Montreal Alouettes. Went up to the Montreal Alouettes. I was with the Montreal, signed by them for about 6 months, but we didn't report until their camp started in October. It's like different. It's different than the NFL. So their camp starts October. So I go up there. First day is just like all physical paperwork stuff. Second day, we get our playbook, kind of go through the playbook. Third day, we're out on the field. But before the third day, that night, I had a dream that I left Montreal to start wrestling. And I was like, I wake up, I'm like, okay, it's a crazy dream. And I'm not like I don't really remember I'm not someone who remembers their dreams that often. So I was just like, oh, that's crazy.
Completely two different things. Football, the wrestling, you're in Canada.
Right. So then I was just like, all right, I got to get to practice. I've got, this is going to be the first day we're out on the field. I had a bunch of missed calls. I had about like 6 missed calls from the general manager and some text messages. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird that he's blowing my phone up like that. But at the time, there was a potential player strike going on in Canada. So I was assuming that it was something to do with the player strike, because I was notified that if there was a player strike, they were going to have to send me home, because in Canada, in the CFL, you can only have so many American players. And I was like one of the the American players. So I was one of the limited slots. So if the strike came, they'd send back all the American players. So I was like, oh, damn, maybe the strike went through. So I get into the facility. I go into the office. I meet up with, what was his name? What was that guy's name? Jean-Marc was the GM at the time up there. I don't know if he still is, but he was just like, we got to let you go.
Oh, no.
And I was like, and it was like, there was like no explanation. It was very cut and dry. Yo, we got to let you go. And then I was like, I'm not even going to like argue, you know what I mean? Like, why, like, I'm not going to be like, why, what happened? Like, I didn't even put pads on, dude. Like, what, so I was just like, all right. And then I went back to my room, grabbed my bag, went to the airport. And now I'm kind of like, I'm salty. I'm like sulking, I'm like, dude, I'd been signed by them for like 6 months, and I was going to come up here, and my agent's blowing me up because there's a bunch of other Canadian teams that were, looking to sign me, because linemen are like a hot commodity in Canada. So it was just like, it was early enough in camp. A bunch of teams were like, let's bring them in. So in that process, though, I'm in the airport and I'm drinking a couple airport beers. And, and I'm thinking about this dream. And I'm like, man, if I'm honest with myself here, my gut is telling me like, I'm done playing football, because to be honest, the Canada, if I was to be honest with myself at the time, which I was chasing a paycheck up in Canada. Like I was really only in Canada to get game film so I could get back to the NFL. But in that process, I wasn't like, I didn't have that same luster for the game that I had a few months before when I was with the Bengals. Like that wasn't there. And in a game where there's such dire consequences, not having that edge is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never played the game without it. So I just was like, I think it's time to move on. And if also, this was me actually listening to my gut and not second guessing myself for the first time, because part of the story I didn't tell you was when I transferred from Pitt, I knew a year before that I needed to transfer. I knew in my heart that I needed to transfer a year prior, but my pride and a girl got in the way. You know, like I had this girl that I was, this girl that I loved and I was seeing at the time, who was living in Pittsburgh as well. And then also I just was like, yo, I just need another year, another camp. And I know I can prove myself, and I know it'll be cool. I just need another year. But I knew, and I didn't listen. So this time that dream was like, I don't know, it was a message from somebody telling me, hey, let's go. So I called my offensive line coach from college up, who's like, real close in my life, even outside of football. So I just, he's kind of like part of my inner circle. And I just was like, hey man, I got released, but I think I'm done playing football. And he was like, what are you going to do? I was like, dude, I think I'm going to wrestle. And he just was like, fuck yeah. And he was just like, because he was just a big wrestling fan. So he just was for it. And then and I'm sure you could hear in my voice that I was like 100%,
Did you have, were you a fan of it before you had that dream, or did it come out of nowhere? Like, oh, I feel like I could do this. Because you hear a lot of the stories where football players go in that direction because of the grit, the athletic competition. But were you a fan of it before making that transition?
Yeah. So like growing up, when I was younger, I watched wrestling, but like everybody, you hit like 12, 13 years old and you're too cool for wrestling. Right. So right. So you stop. Well, you're like, I'm not watching that fake shit. Right. You're not watching wrestling anymore or whatever. But I had always told myself that when I got done playing football, I was going to be a wrestler.
Okay.
Because I knew that I could be. I knew that I could be a wrestler. More importantly, I wanted to, because I saw one of my, favorite parts of wrestling was the personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Like those big, larger than life personalities. Like, yeah, the wrestling's cool, right? Slamming people, that's cool. But like, to me, it was like the personas, like that was what was cool. And to me, I was like, yo, I could do that.
The entertainment factor, basically.
Right. And so I just was like, I know I could do that. And when you're in school and you have a teacher that asks, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you like tell them.
Yep.
And most people try to like tell them something realistic about, I'm going to be an accountant or some shit like that. And they're like, okay, what are you going to do to take steps to get to that? I would always tell them like, yo, I'm going to be in the NFL. And then they would get like, well, Dan, that's great goals to have, but that's maybe set your sights on something more realistic.
Oh.
Right. And then I would just be like, yeah, I was like, that is realistic. I mean, I would just like break it down on like why it was realistic. And then they're like, well, what if you get hurt? What's your backup plan? And I was like, well, then I'm going to be a professional wrestler. And then that would make them even saltier. And then And then that would just make them saltier because it was just more unrealisticness. And then they would ask me whatever my third plan was, and I would tell them I was going to be a porn star or whatever. Really, just put the cherry on top.
Make them even saltier.
Right. So, so it was back in my subconscious. It wasn't out of left field, but it definitely wasn't on my mind at the time. You know what I mean? I was fully focused on football.
Mm-hmm.
So that dream kind of it did come out of nowhere, but it had always been something in the back of my mind that I was like, yo, I could do this. And I want to do this, more importantly, more than just I could do it, as I want to do it and I am going to excel at it. So I called my agent and was like, yo, Al, thank you, man. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. But you could tell those teams, like, I'm done playing football. And he was just like, all right. And like, that was kind of that. We kind of went our ways. And then I called my grandpa and I was like, yo, Gramps, I just got cut and I'm broke. I am pretty sure I just overdrafted my account on airport beers and I need a place to stay. So my Gramps, just being my guy, always looking out for me. He, there's a spot for me in the basement. So I moved back to Erie. I moved into the basement, which sucked, having to move back home type thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like real shot to the gut there. But, I spent a week just like chilling in the basement, like kind of mourning like the death of this relationship that I had with football, right? / preparing for the next adventure that I was about to embark on. And I was like, okay, what do I got to do to get to the WWE? Like like, how do I make this happen? Because I don't have a friend that works for the company. I don't have an uncle or cousin or famous whatever. Like, how do I get here? So I just started searching stuff online. And I was like, okay, well, there's these schools all over the place. So I started calling some reputable schools around my area. There's this place in Allentown called the Wild Samoans. There were these guys that were, like the 70s, 80s. They were like these two, this part of this Samoan dynasty that was really, famous in wrestling. And, they ran this school in Allentown. So I called them. They never picked up. They never picked their phone up, dude. I left messages. It was like 5 hours from my crib. Never picked up messages, never got back to me. So then I called this place in Louisville, Kentucky called OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling. Now, this school used to be the training ground for the WWE back in the day. So I was like, yo, this is as good of a school as any. So I called them. First ring, this guy, Matt Capitelli, picks up. Matt Capitelli is like an angel. Okay, this dude is literally like an angel. Like, God sent him into my life to help steer me in the right track. I'm extremely blessed and honored to have known Matt Capitelli and have him come into my life. One of the most genuine, authentic, caring individuals I've ever met. And like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Unconditional. That's the word I'm looking for. Like, no condition. I talked to this dude for 45 minutes when we called. I told this dude like my whole scenario. Like, hey man, I just, football, this, that, yada, yada, yada. I'm back in this position and I'm looking to try and get into wrestling. Just told him what I was about, what I was trying to do. And then he listened and then spent time kind of telling me what I needed to be prepared. And he was just like, in 3 months or 4 months, we start a class in October. It's June at the time. He was like, in October, we start a class. It's like $6,000. Yeah. He's like, it's like $6,000. And yeah, like, I'll see you here October 18th. So I was like, all right. Well, I got off the phone and I just was like, well, I need to find a job. I need to make $6,000 between June. It was the beginning. It was right around my birthday. And then, which is like June 8th, and then October 18th. So I just was like, yo, I got to find a job. So I had one of my high school football coaches, his brother-in-law worked at a car dealership, like one of the big dealerships in Erie. And I had never really had a real job, like I did manual labor with my dad when I was younger, but football paid the bills in college. And then I never, I had a bouncing job for some, I wouldn't call that a job even, you know what I mean? Like I had more fun doing that than I would if I was actually going out. So I don't know if I would really call it a job. I just was getting paid to do it. But so it was my first time in the real world, work experience. They needed a sales assistant. And it was like, yo, well, if you get this job, you get paid $400 a week. And I was like, all right, if I get paid $400 a week over X amount of time, I'll have this much money, which will be enough to get me covered and then find a job when I get down to Louisville. I was like, I can make this happen. So I go to this interview, show up to this interview. I start talking to one of the guys, we kind of go back and forth. Next thing I know, he brings in another manager. Me and these other guys are kind of going back and forth. We're all talking, having a good time. Next thing I know, the guy goes, we kind of go from chumming it up to straight to business. And he just goes, hey, he's like, would you want to be a salesman? And I was just like, how much does it pay?
It's all about the money.
Right. Yeah. Like, how much does this job pay? And he was like, well, it's a commission-based job, but, based on per sale you'll make X amount of money. And then when you get 5 sales, you'll get a bonus that will retroactively fit the 5 sales. And then if you hit 10, you'll make this much. And it was a pretty nice amount of money. And I was just like, yeah, bro. I was like, yeah, I would like that job. Because it was a lot more money than I was making as that sales assistant. So I became a car salesman. And I realized really quick that I loved sales. It was like the first car I ever sold, and I got the little X mark on the big sheet that was up in the boardroom that, everyone's name was there. You got an X next to your name per sale that you got. And as more X's you got, you went up the leaderboard. It was just it was a great feeling, dude. I remember first sale I made, I got off the phone. I went out in between the cubicles and just started karate fighting the air. You know what I mean? I was jacked up. So that was fun. I was the leading salesman over the new car department for 3 months, all 3 months that I was there.
Was it like a boost of confidence? Because you talked about everything in your life so far it's gone good, but then something backtracked you. But this was a chance where things were going well. Were you ever worried that something would go the wrong way, or you would lose that steam in a sense?
You mean with sales?
Well, yeah, because you talked about football, you got into college, injuries happened, didn't play, you kind of transferred, you got back, but then an injury happened. So anything good that happened, it somehow got deteriorated backwards. Were you ever worried about that at all?
No. So I think one of my true superpowers is I have this freakish sense of like self-belief that like no matter what, I'm gonna make it happen. Like no matter what is whatever that I have ahead of me, like I'm gonna make it happen. Like me making it to the NFL or not making it to the NFL was like a shock to me. Right? Like that was like I couldn't believe that didn't happen, right? Like me becoming like this guy offering me a car sales job was like, yeah, no problem. I'm going to do great at this. And like, then great. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to become like the whole thing about becoming a pro wrestler was like, I knew the whole thing I kept telling myself the whole time is I just need to get in front of the right person. And if the right person sees me, then everything will take care of itself because I have what it takes. Like I'm what they are looking for. And like I didn't just think that. Like I believe that. And I believe that you create shit with your mind. And maybe when I was younger, I didn't really realize it. I think that I developed that as almost as a defense mechanism as a child, because I was always being told, because I came from, the lower socioeconomic bracket, I came from a dysfunctional family. I had everyone around me that wasn't really doing anything with their life, and people always telling me that I wasn't going to be anything. Like I developed this sense of like, no, fuck you. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm destined for something great. Like I have greatness in me. I'm going to show you. And some of that is like that, like me trying to prove. So there's a little bit of ego in there, but if you really want to get introspective, you want to like dice that onion and peel back those layers there, more than ego, because that's what everyone thinks it is initially, is ego from outside. I was like, oh, that's ego. Well, you don't want to know what that really is, bro. It's like hurt. It's like a scared little boy that's being like not loved. And all I want to do is be loved. So I need to be great to show you that I'm great, so that now that I'm great, you can love me. That's what that really is, if you want to get deep. So I developed that as a defense mechanism. And that ego, right, is what allowed me to have the velocity to escape the orbit of my upbringing. And that was necessary for me to break through out of the atmosphere into outer space of greatness, right? Like that was a tool that was given to me. I don't know why. The creator gave it to me. He gave it to me so that I could use it and wield it. Now it's been a double-edged sword, like I've cut myself as deep as I've cut others with, like you have to learn how to wield that thing. And I've, I'm still learning, right, every day. But over time, I've gotten much better with that. And that belief is just always been there. You can create your own reality. And that's one of the things that I try to, with my show, Spark in the Dark, is like, I bring people on that show that are unique entities, like these people from all different walks of life. They are kind of unorthodox, but like they're successful in their field or whatever it is. And it's like, hey, I want to let you know that like you don't have to color in between the lines to be successful. Like, you can color wherever you want on this piece of paper if it makes you happy, but you got to believe it. And sometimes you got to create. You got to create, you got to blaze a path that wasn't there. Sometimes you got to go, despite what everyone thinks, despite everyone's doubt of what you're doing or where you're going, you're going to go and get there. And for me, you know, that's kind of where I've always been. And I think that that's always helped me. And that's not to say that those times of setback or failure, right, weren't hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still a human, right? I'm still a human. I still dealt with, you know, all of those emotions that come with that. But I think the big thing is just like, even though I would be dealing with those emotions of sadness, of hurt, of depression, even in certain circumstances where I was just super low, I never stopped moving, never stopped doing, even if it wasn't with the same enthusiasm or the same intensity as if I was, you know, not hurt emotionally, right? I still was doing things. And I still had the belief that like, this sucks, right? And when I was younger, I'd catch myself more woe is me, you know, that woe is me type. I mean, why me? Why this situation, right? But like, I would catch myself and be like, well, I'm going to get it. I know things are going to get better if I just keep going. But right now it sucks. But if I keep going, it's not going to suck as much. So that, you know, to answer your question, no. So I get the money, you know, I sell all these cars, I make the money, I drive to Louisville, Kentucky. I report first day, Saturday morning, October 18th, 8:30 a.m. I remember it.
It's like a movie script right now.
Yes. I drove my, so I had to sell. So I had to be in Louisville, Kentucky at 8:30 a.m. on a Saturday. Louisville is 9 hours from Erie, Pennsylvania. Friday, I wanted to leave Thursday night, get there a day early. But I was one car away from hitting my bonus. And that was the difference between like an extra $1,000 or an extra $3,000. Like, it was like an exponential amount of money. And I really needed that extra couple G's. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna pack everything up. I'm gonna have everything ready. I'm just gonna work. I'm gonna grind out this last day and just get this last car sold. I don't know how I'm gonna get this last car sold, but I'm gonna just get this last car sold. And I'm like sitting on the lot, and I'm like, you know, calling. There was you know, somebody that I was talking to that was like wanting to buy a Suburban. And then there was somebody, or a Tahoe, and then there was somebody that was coming in, and, you know, sometimes you get people off the lot and this and that. And I'm just like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And it's like getting later in the day, and I needed to leave by a certain time. So I just was like, man, I think I'm going to not get this sale. And then sure enough, somebody called and they were like, yo, I want that Tahoe. And I just was like, all right, bro, come down. I'll have all the paperwork taken care of. Got off the phone, more karate, fight in the air, you know, filled out all the paperwork, did all of that, drove back home to say goodbye to my grandpa and my mom, got in the Cadillac, and I drove straight to Louisville. I got to the warehouse at 8 a.m. and then with like no sleep. And then I showed up. We started at 8:30, and I started training.
Right at the nick of time.
Right in the nick of time. Everything worked out. So, but Louis, that was that, you know, so then I trained there for about 5 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks. And then one day I got a call from a number in Connecticut. And normally I don't pick up random numbers, but I know that the WWE headquarters is in Connecticut.
Everyone will answer the phone if they're trying to be in the WWE if it's a Connecticut phone number.
Right, exactly. So, and I'm working at a, I'm actually working at a GNC at this time. So I'm like working in the store. I get this call and I'm like, I just knew it was that. So no one was, thank God nobody was in the store. But I went in, locked the front door so nobody could come in. I locked the front door, took this call. It was the, vice president of talent relations, Canyon Seaman. Hey man, just got your information, came across my desk, and we're interested. We want to bring you down to our tryout. Only thing is, our tryout's in 13 days, and I know it's kind of short notice. If you're not in shape, there's another tryout in 6 months. But if you're not ready, just let me. And before he could finish, I just was like, dmatha67 gmail.com, send the itinerary. I was like, I'll see you, bro. that was like, I was like, boop, hung up, and then more started fighting karate in the boxes in the back of the place. Because like, bro, I stay in shape, like get in shape. I don't need to get in shape. So this is a key lesson to anybody out there. If you always stay ready, you never have to get ready.
That's true.
I was in the best, up to that point, I was in the best shape of my life. He called me. There was no doubt that I was going to go down there and I was going to smoke that tryout. I was going to smoke it. I was going to do that tryout better than anybody could do a tryout. I was going down to that tryout to get hired. Hands down. There was no doubt. There was no disbelief. It was like this. Everything that happened up to that point had worked for that to happen. Everything was happening as it was supposed to be. So 13 days goes by. I fly down to Orlando. We have the tryout. There was really no wrestling that took place in the tryout. It's just 3 days of like cardio hell. you just go. So the WWE Performance Center has, it's a giant warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
On the bottom floor, they've got a weight room, turf racks, the whole 9 yards, training room. And then on the other side of the building is all wrestling rings, 7 wrestling rings. So at the time, they're doing, you'd come in, you'd practice, the session would start. They'd go through a warm up. The warm up was really a workout. It was like a body weight workout that they called a warm up. And then after that, you would go through these different drills. And they'd have all these different type of drills that you could do in a ring. But the thing was, you would go from one ring, do the drill, get out of the ring, go to the next ring, do that drill again, rinse, repeat 7 times through until you got back around. Then you would go through a different drill. And you would literally do that for 3 straight hours.
Wow.
And you do that with coaches in every ring, yelling at you, critiquing you. And it's just, it was just a pressure cooker. They wanted what it was just like mental warfare. They didn't like, it wasn't whether or not you were going to break. Like they knew people were going to physically be exhausted. You were going to empty the tank doing that.
Mm-hmm. That
wasn't the point of the drill, was to see who could continue to go. Even though there were some of us that could continue to go. But it was, were you going to quit or not? That was all that it was. It was like, how bad do you want this? Are you in shape? Do you really want this? A lot of people want this job. There's a million people out in the world that want this job. Why should we give you this job?
Yep. So
you do that for 3 days. On the 3rd day, they add a promo. So you got to cut a promo, a monologue, for those of you who don't know what a promo is. So you cut a 60-second monologue, and it's got to be 60 seconds. They give you your time cues, because on television you may have a 60-second slot. and you gotta hit the slot. You go too long, commercial break hits, no one hears what you have to say. You just killed yourself. You go too short, and like they've got all this dead time. So you got to hit your times. So you got 60 seconds. And this is really what makes or break a performer, because there's tons of great athletes out there. There's tons of great athletes in the world. But this is sports entertainment.
Yeah.
It's not just sports. So it's like, can you shine with a microphone in your hand? Can you shine when the red light's on and everybody in the room's looking at you? And nothing's worse than cutting a promo in front of all of your peers. You know, like it's way easier to cut promos in front of, 2, 3, 10,000 people than it is in front of, 50 of your peers just watching you. And then they're just
blank stares.
Right. They're just, well, it's not even that, they're just judging you. It's like that judgmental eye that's on you. They're waiting because they're watching you from a performer's eye. Mm-hmm. They're just like, they're critiquing everything. They're waiting for you to slip up or whatever. So it's a pressure cooker. But I just was like, this is my time to shine. This is my time to shine. Cause like I look the way I do, I'm 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", legend has it I'm 6'9", whatever, somewhere in that range, 285. And I look great. I've built a great physique over these years of training. Like from a physical standpoint, you look at me, I look great. I look the part, and that's what people expect. But like, I don't want to be known for that. Mm-hmm. I like that is a part, obviously I put a lot of effort into training this way, but like, I don't want people to be like, oh, he's just a big guy, right? It's like, no, I'm an entertainer. I have something else to offer other than being big, other than being jacked, other than being strong, like I bring other things to the table, and I need you to know about that, because this right here, what you see is always what's going to get people's attention. I know this. I know ever since I was a little kid, people have been staring at me like, what is this creep? You know what I mean? Like I've always been the biggest kid in my class. I've always been, and then once I hit puberty and I just got ginormous, this is like people just stare at me all the time. It doesn't matter where I go. People just stare like I'm like a wild animal like out of its enclosure, at the zoo. So I get it. Like, I understand that, but it's like, no, I'm more than that. And like, let me show you. So like, this was my time to shine. And, promo comes, do my thing, killed the promo. I was and when you do, and I've learned this in acting, through acting classes, training, etc. When you have a great performance. You don't need anybody to tell you when you have a great performance, mm-hmm. because when the performance is over, like it's something you leave something, a part of yourself there. You feel that. And it's like, damn. And you don't need to talk about it with anybody. I don't need you to tell me how great, and not to say like, yeah, you want to, sure, you can. Great job, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time to watch my segment, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I don't need that. Like, I know. And, it was like one of those things where I knew. And then I walked out of the gym to go take pictures like we were supposed to. In that process, I get snagged, pull me aside. They start talking to me. And they go, hey, we're going to sign you. And then I just was like, fuck yeah. I was like, hell yeah. So then it was just like, I did it. I up to that point, like everything was just falling into place. Now that was like, so that happened in January. I didn't report until September though. So that was like,
oh wow,
9 months of just chilling. So I had to like find ways to like occupy myself. So, like I continue to train for wrestling outside of the WWE. I decided to do a bodybuilding show for shits and gigs because I needed a challenge and I didn't have anything to challenge me. And I just, I always hear that prepping for a physique competition or bodybuilding competition is the most mentally challenging thing you could do. So I just was like, oh yeah, well, let's find out how challenging this is. So I was training at this gym, this bodybuilding gym, and this dude was like he was a nutritionist, and this was, I had a 101 nutritional base at that time in my life. I wasn't, more than beginner, more like an intermediate amount of knowledge on nutrition, but by no means would I have considered myself like an expert at that time. So I was like, I'm going to need someone to help me with my diet, but like training, I got that down pat. So I just need someone to help me with like my training. So I found this dude who I knew in the local area, Jack, who was a bodybuilder himself. And I just was like, hey man, I want to challenge myself. I just want to see what this is about. And he was like, well, there's a show in about 12 weeks. And I was like, all right, let's do it, dude. And so he was just like, all right. He was like, yeah, normally, normally it's like a minimum of 16 weeks to get ready, but you look like you're already in pretty good shape. So we started training for the show. I did this physique show, took second place in it. But to be honest with you, it was the first thing that I had ever done in my life where I wasn't competing to win.
Okay.
And it was weird because like I wasn't doing the competition to beat anybody. Like there was no like, oh, I want to beat this person or beat that person, or like I just wanted to challenge myself.
Personal challenge to see if you could do it and like be prepared. And
right. And yes, exactly. And I had no desires to be a bodybuilder. You know what I mean? Like I like bodybuilding. I enjoy watching guys and seeing guys' physiques and women's physiques that train really hard. Like I do enjoy that, right? But like I had no desire to be a bodybuilder. But I knew at that point in my life that if I just focused on me and just, I just follow the code of how you do anything is how you do everything, that like I will be in the best shape I possibly could be, and most likely will be in a position to win.
Mm-hmm.
So that process was just like, it was just, it gave me something to keep my mind occupied on. Also was like, yo, I'm going to come into the WWE, right? Just being in the best shape of my life. And then I learned, like I said, I learned a lot about my body on how to train, nutrition in that process. And I think that that's important. A lot of times we get hyper fixated on specificity. You see a lot of people, they want to just focus on one thing and get really good at one thing, which I'm all for. That's what I did in the early part of my life with football. I just hyper fixated on that. But there's something that you can't gain until you start developing skills outside of whatever it is that you want to become a master at.
Mm-hmm.
And all those other things start rippling into all the other crevices of your life, and they leak back into whatever the main thing is. So I learned a lot from that process. Then, I was like, okay, this is a very difficult, challenging thing, but I did it and I did it. And I didn't, I didn't skip, cut a corner, miss a beat, nothing. Like I did it. And it was just like, it was a self-gratification thing. Like I didn't need a trophy or an award or money or anything. It was just like, yo, this is awesome. And I got to spend like the after event with like my close friends, right? Like we went to dinner afterwards and I got to enjoy a meal and they got to like see my crowd. You know what I mean? It was very simple. Like it wasn't like, man, I want to win the national championship or I want to get a contract, you know, like, or I want to get, you know, I want to become a WWE superstar. It wasn't anything like, it was just like, yo, I went to this show. I mean, I had to pay $500 to do it. You know what I mean? Like I lost money. You know what I mean? Like it's a scam. Like those the NPR like or the what is it NPR? It's not NPR. What is not IFBB? What's under the federation that's under IFBB? I can't remember it. I keep wanting to say
no idea.
Right. I keep wanting to say NPR, but that's a podcast. But anyway, like like they just suck money out of people, right? All these people that want to be bodybuilders. But that process was just like, it was very satisfying because it was like, yo, I'm competing, but I'm not competing. And like the outcome isn't important. It was about the process.
Mm-hmm.
It was about the journey of getting to the end. And like, then afterwards, I got like my friends and family got to see the work that I put in. They got to see that I told them I was going to do this thing and then I did it. And then it was just adding to the credibility of me, the person. Because like, that's one thing that I kind of take pride in is like anything I've ever told anyone I was going to do, like I've done it, no matter how crazy it's been. And I think that that's very important. Because if you can't keep, you know, you're telling it to other people. Yeah. But you're really telling it to yourself. And if you can't trust yourself, if you can't keep a promise to yourself, then who can you?
Correct.
So that takes place. I report to camp like or report to the WWE like a week later, 2 weeks later. And then, you know, just go through the meat grinder of training in the performance center. And that, you know, I was with the WWE for 5 years. About 6 months into the WWE, I started getting my live shows, like the real small armories and things like that. And then I slowly started working my way up to starting to perform more shows, starting to get to perform at bigger venues. And, you know, then, you know, over time, you know, you get better at your craft. And, you know, they start trusting you more. You start working with better people, other performers. You start learning more. I got to start traveling, you know, got to travel around the world. One of the cool things I got to do while working with the WWE was they would, you know, they'd hold tryouts and they would have some of the talent, some of the wrestlers help run the tryouts, like all the physical stuff. And like, that was like one of my favorite things to do. Like other than perform was to like to run the tryouts. And it was just, you know, it's fun. You know, you're around all these people that are like pursuing their dreams and aspirations. And then like, you're in a, like kind of a coach position as well. So, you know, and I like that. I like that. You know, I could totally see myself being a coach one day. So it was just, you know, it was fun. And then I got to, you know, I got to coach, you know, I got to help with the tryout in Dubai. I got to help with the tryout in Saudi Arabia. I've got to, you know, go to London. I've travel all over the world through that process. But, you know, I guess to get us up to speed on present day, right before the pandemic, I had been with the WWE for 5 years. Right before the pandemic, right as the pandemic started in March, I was in a car accident. March 28th, 2020. I was in a car accident and I was ejected through the front window of my car. Wow. 60 miles an hour. 1 second I was driving down the road, like, hey, this is kind of a weird intersection. And then the next thing you know, I wake up and I'm laying on the concrete. And there's like 3 people laying over top of me. And I was like, there's an ambulance in the distance, there's chaos all around. I'm just like, what's going on? This is extremely scary. And then the next memory I have, because like I don't remember any of the accident. I don't remember like, oh shit, a swerve, like it was like, this is a weird intersection. Waking up on the concrete. Zero memory of the accident. I wake up, people over top of me. I got up, like I stood up and was like, and this lady, I remember this lady like grabbing my face and like squeezing like kind of like my cheeks and being like, I'm so and so. I'm like a nurse practitioner, and like, you need to lay back down. Your neck might be broken. And I know that that's true. I don't know if I did it or not. Like, cause I don't remember, because then the next thing I remember is being on the stretcher, being put into the ambulance. But then I remember the paramedics dropping me. And to give them credit, I was too big for the stretcher. I was like hanging off the stretcher and shit. These two dudes were probably just like really strong. They were like, dude, we didn't know we were gonna have to lift up Gigantor into the back of paramedics. So they got me. I think that if I remember correctly, they were like asking for help for a third person. And then we got into the paramedics, and then they were just hauling ass to Orlando Trauma. And I'm like asking questions, trying to figure out what's happening. And they were just like, they couldn't find my wallet. So I was in the system as John Doe. And they just were like, sir, you were in a car accident. You were ejected through your front window, and we believe your neck is broken.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was like it was really frightening scenario, because I'm like strapped to this stretcher, harness, strapped, every part of my body is strapped, so I can't even like move anything. But I'm just like, I had this weird feeling that like, even though I was scared and like my body was like in trauma, I was like, I had this weird sense of relief behind all of the fear and trauma that I was okay. And then they get me to Orlando Trauma. There's like a team wait, and they poke and prod. They run every test. They stick me into the CAT scanner. They pull me out about 30 minutes later, and which felt like 7 hours. That's the longest 30 minutes ever. The doc comes in and he just goes, man, I don't know who you are or where you're from, but there's nothing wrong with you.
Oh, wow.
He was like, you got a real nasty gash on the back of your head. He's like, we put 5 staples in there. We're going to have to put like 12 more stitches. He's like, you got some road burn down the left side of your body. Your wrist and elbow's kind of banged up, but there was no cranium bleeding. There's no ruptures. There's no bulging discs. There's no fractures. Your pelvis is intact. They took me up to my room. I was in my room by myself. And that night was just like, I don't know, it was this, between my brain being rattled around and like all of the emotions of everything that took place, I just remember just kind of like breaking down and just being like, man, I like almost like, I want to say there were like tears of joy, but like, I don't know, they were just tears, dude. I don't even know if I was happy or sad or what. I just was like, and I know that like emotional outbursts are kind of part of head trauma, but I just unloaded, just like cried in the bed, and it just was like, man, this is so crazy, this situation. But I'm so fucking happy that like my neck is not broken. You know, like I'm so happy that like I'm healthy for the most part, other than bleeding and road burn, which sucked because there was like gravel in my skin and shit. But like I'll take that over the alternative.
Well, definitely because of like the recovery time. If you had a broken neck, you couldn't do maybe things that you wanted to do in the future. But with the injury you had, the recovery time is probably less than going through therapy, physical therapy, and stuff like that. Because I mean, you see it on like TV shows or those ER shows, and people going through similar things with neck injuries, and their future is not what they thought it would be in a way.
Yeah, well, a broken neck in that scenario for me is like an entire life altering, you know what I mean? Like there's like a paradigm shift in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like this tool that has provided me with a life full of adventure is no longer useful anymore.
Yep.
Which, you know, it would be a lot to deal with. But that didn't happen. And like, you know, it's this, you know, flesh wound, and it's nothing. I'll take a flesh wound. So 11:30 a.m., dude, my nurse came. She put me on the wheelchair, wheeled me to the door. My homeboy came, picked me up, got up, hopped in the car, took me home, walked there. That was that. I went home. I slept. I went home and I slept. I did a lot of sleeping. And then you know, 2 weeks later, I got released by the WWE.
Let me guess, budget cuts.
Yeah. 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 Because of the pandemic, they released like 40% of the staff, and also I was just in a car accident as well, so it was just like
it would be a while till you'll get back into the ring.
Well, yeah, it was just a good opportunity for them, you know, for all that to take place. So you know, it was just like one of those things. And to be honest, I was unhappy with my circumstance with the company at that point. I'd been with the company for 5 years, and I was, you know, that last year was kind of unhappy with the way things were going. And I felt like I wasn't being listened. Like my displeasures with the way I was being used weren't being listened to, or they were being listened to, and I wasn't getting honest information back from them. I was expressing how I was feeling. They were telling me something, but what they were telling me wasn't necessarily what was real. And that became really frustrating.
Well, during your career, you were mostly live events, and you only from what I know, you only had one main roster, which was the Greatest Royal Rumble event.
Yeah.
And that's such a quick, not many people in the United States probably saw unless they were watching it. But then you came back and then you weren't being used as much. Then you made NXT UK. And that was almost like the end of your career was over there. And the whole transformation, your character, basically.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there was this. Well, there was never an effort to to use me as a character.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It was just like places like they needed me to like the Greatest Royal Rumble. They just needed bodies. And like, don't get me wrong, it was a super cool experience to be able to be out in front of 67,000 people. You know, like it was a cool experience, right? But it's not, as a wrestler, that's not like, you don't just want to be a guy that's filling a spot. Like you want to be a character.
You want to have more appearances than that.
Yeah, you want to be a character on the weekly episodic television show.
Yes.
You know, like you want to establish your presence and like have an opportunity to build your character so the fans can start like deciding whether or not they like you or not. So that, you know what I mean? Like that's what that is. Like that's what you put all this work in for. That's what you do all the creative aspect of wrestling for. That's all the storylines that you write out, the storylines that you pitch, the promos that you cut, the gear that you buy, the way that you envision your character, the way he walks, the way he talks, like his move set, you know, all his little in-game expressions that I would yell in the ring, right? Like there was a lot of thought that I put into what I did. And you know, it was just, that was what I was pursuing.
Didn't they kind of like promote you in a way, and then didn't like Samoa Joe like attack you on your debut?
Yeah,
in a way.
I think that was like early. I think I was maybe like 8 months deep into the company as well.
So it's just a filler spot, basically. You were just planted there to be that individual that got it back.
Well, they needed, so you know, Samoa Joe had just come over to NXT, and they were trying to make Joe look like a monster, right? And they were just like, you know, who do we have that are guys that don't have TV equity, that aren't going to probably be on TV for a long time? Who are guys that look good that we can like have Joe beat and make Joe look like a killer? And then somebody had this idea like, oh, we've got this friggin' ginormously jacked dude, you know what I mean, that's been here for like 8 months. We could, you know, do something with him. And then like they were like, you know, they just were like, well, let's throw these promos together and build him like he's going to be something, and then have Joe come in. And I mean, it's cool. Like honestly though, like that never really bugged me, because it was like, you know, that's supposed to be kind of a part of the business. Like when you help, because this is a misconception in wrestling. People think that it's an individual sport, but pro wrestling is a team game. The problem is it attracts a bunch of, you know, solo stars, right? Everybody that's they want to be the star. Yeah, they want, you know, that they want all of the attention on them. But it's like, yo, your job is to help each other get over. Your job is to help lift everybody up. And at that time, my role was to make Joe look like a monster. I think you did your job. And you do that in good faith, expecting that later down the road that will be paid back to you. You know what I mean? That's why you do that. Mm-hmm. That's why that you're cool. And I come from a team game. I come from football. And more than just football, I was an offensive lineman. But like, we're the most selfless players in a team game. Like, we're 5 guys that work as one. They get no credit. And the only time we ever get talked about is when we do wrong. And it's not about us getting the credit. Like, our job is to protect and smash. You know what I mean? Like, that's our job. So it's like, that's cool, man. I've got no problems assisting somebody. I've got no problem helping anybody. I don't have a problem with that. So that was like my thought process on that. And by no means, and Joe was great. Like I liked, you know, I was happy to do that for Joe. Joe was always a super cool dude. All my interactions with Joe were always awesome. Joe was one of the you know, the veterans that was like a approachable dude that would be willing to, you know, share some information with you, you know, look out for you, etc. So I had, you know, no problems doing that.
Since your release, have you wanted to ever go back into wrestling, or do you like the path that you're taking now and doing what you want to do?
So this is the $1 million question. To be honest with you, man, I had a pretty bad taste in my mouth with wrestling after, you know, between the, you know, the accident and then being released. You know, I just felt like it was a grimy move. And especially because I had asked for my release back in December.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they, they didn't give it to me. And it was just like, you wasted like 4 months where I could have been trying to pursue other companies that wanted my services. And maybe that's why they held on to me. I don't know. But it just, left a poor taste in my mouth. And then, between the accident, the pandemic, losing your job, being in a shit ton of pain, it takes its toll on you mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't we all were going through it, during the pandemic, right? Like after like the first month or two, it wasn't like vacation anymore. It was like, Jesus Christ, like when are we going to go back? Yeah. So like when am I going to get back to normal life? So, there was that toll. And then there was the toll of the, even though I physically was able to be back, I think I underestimated the concussion and like what that did, to my like to my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like, yo, I'm back, and I got cleared to be back. I went to a vestibular therapist, and that's like the vestibular system deals with like your balance and your brain and things like that. So, I got cleared by the vestibular therapist. I was starting to work out again. I was running, going to yoga. I didn't want to lift any weights though. It was like, I didn't like, and some of that was because I was actually recovering more from my wrestling injuries than I was from the car accident injury. You got to think, I had been wrestling for 6 straight years
Mm-hmm.
with like no time off. The most time you'd get is like maybe 2 weeks around Christmas time. But other than that, you're just like right back at it. And you do that for that long, and you just push through and just you work, and you lose the baseline of what normal is in terms of like pain. Like you lose where homeostasis is. So like now it's like, okay, this is the floor for where your pain should be normally. But like as enough time goes on, your floor starts rising ever so gradually, and you don't realize it. So now your floor is like 50% above where it should be, but you don't realize that because that's your new norm. And it's not until you get time off from an injury, like in that particular instance, where like you have that time off, and then you have all this pain come rushing back to you, where you're like, wow, that's crazy. Like I didn't realize my elbow was that jacked up.
Oh.
I didn't realize my knee was that jacked up. My Achilles was that jacked up. My neck, like it was just like, damn, like I'm dealing with a lot of shit here that I didn't think was that big of a deal, because I was just in destroyer mode. Like I have this switch that I can do, and a lot of us, high performance athletes and entertainers, we have this switch that we can flip, and it's just like, just the mission. This is the mission. Everything else, we block it out, we train through it. It's nothing. But then you get that time, and it's like, okay, well, holy crap. I was running from a lot of shit, or not just compartmentalizing pain. So it was just, that, I was dealing with that. So I had this like nasty taste in my mouth where I was like, yo, I'm done wrestling. I'm done,
Mm-hmm.
like screw that. I had some others, I'd always wanted to do other things. I'm not somebody that can just do one thing, as I'm sure you can tell through this story. I can't. I don't know. Like I'm not built that way. I need variety, like I need consistency, and I need to like, take on something and really immerse myself in something. But then I need new, stimulus and new adventures, new journeys. Right. So it's just like, And I knew one of the things I had learned through football was like nothing lasts forever. And I knew wrestling wasn't going to last forever.
Yep.
Now, I didn't know how long it would last or wouldn't last, but I was just like, there's going to come a point where I'm going to want to walk away somewhat unscathed. Like I want to be 50 and like still, able to, lift my kids up, play with my kids, be able to go on walks with my woman, like whatever it is, enjoy my life relatively pain-free. Now, it's the price you pay to be a gladiator. You're going to have some certain aches and pains when you get older. Like that's just the name of the game, right? I'm not naive, but I want to be able to, I want to be able to enjoy other aspects of my life. And I think something that we don't, especially when we're younger, we don't think about, like you are going to get older. Like we think we're above getting older and like feeling the consequences of age. Like none of us are. Now there's certain things you can do to diminish that, but they're inevitable. So it's like, I am going to get older. I am going to get 50. I am going to get 60. My goal is to be the sexiest 60-year-old. You know what I mean? Like my goal is to be the sexiest 60-year-old, but I'm still going to be 60. So I had that in mind as well, where it's like, okay, post wrestling, there's some things that I love to do. One of the great things about wrestling was I found out that I am an entertainer at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember this very specifically when I was training in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was one of the first times, this was before WWE, I had finally had enough training to have a match at practice, not in front of an audience, but I had a match in practice where like I could put together moves and coordinate the, what we were going to do with like my opponent in the ring and have it make sense. And it takes a while to get there, and it can be very frustrating in wrestling because you learn all this shit, but you can't have a match yet. So you don't really feel the gratification that comes from wrestling until you can do that. But you got to go through X amount of time and training before you can get there. So a lot of people never even make it there. Mm-hmm. They never even realize what they're quitting. But if you're willing to stick it out and get to that point, once you get to that point, I remember this. I will remember this on my deathbed, dude. I was driving in my car after practice, hopping the whip, driving to work. And I remember just busting out laughing. Just uncontrollable laughter of just like pure joy, like running through my heart, just beating out. And I was just like, man, I was like, this is what I was meant to do. Like, this is what I was put on this planet to do. Like, this is what I did and sacrificed and worked all this time for this. And it just made a whole lot of things in my life make sense about my personality, about how I interact, when I was younger, right? Like when we talked about some of the crazy, nefarious partying that I would do, a lot of that was really me trying to like be an entertainer in a weird way. Cause like, we drink a lot of times we drink for different reasons, to have courage to talk to a girl, maybe to numb the pain of a particular circumstance, or, to just not care about your day, or to be enough, to have the courage to be the center of attention, to let go of your inhibitions and be wild and funny and loud and just like carefree. Like that was me. Like I'm like the life of the part. Like I'm a fun for the most part. When I used to drink, like I like to do that. I wanted to be that for my peer group. But what I realized as I got older and I wasn't drinking anymore, but then I was doing this, was like, yo, I was a wild party animal because I had this entertainer thing inside of me and I didn't know how to get it out. And that was how I got it out, which obviously is not a healthy way to get it out. But like, that's what I did to get it out. But like, really, now that I'm doing this, I don't have any urges to drink. I don't have urges to be the center of attention at a party. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, no, this was what I needed. Yeah. So it was just like, it was just crazy. It was a crazy moment where I was just like, wow, it was just a wild moment in my life. And I just remember that, just like beaming joy, uncontrollable laughter, like a crazy man in my car by myself. But so I was saying that to say, I had, so there was others. Now I remember where we're going. There was other things that I wanted to do, right? It's like wrestling is just one way to entertain. I've always wanted to get into voiceover, right? Like I've always wanted to get into voiceover work. So it's like, okay, like I can start pursuing that. I've always wanted to get into acting wrestling really is acting.
Yeah.
But it's like, I want to get into theatrical acting, right? I want to get outside of wrestling and sports entertainment. I'd like to get into that. And then, maybe some other things I'll find along the way. And so I was, started pursuing those things and, got an agent, got a manager during that time, started a podcast. I wanted to start a podcast, started a podcast during that time, started learning videography, audio, mixing software, editing software. And I just was like, I'm done with wrestling. And then maybe about 6 months ago, I remember one morning waking up and like, I just had like a dream about wrestling. And it wasn't even about wrestling. It was about a pitch. It was like a dream. I was like pitching a pitch of like a character. And I woke up with all these ideas. And I just like, when I woke up and I was in a funk, like I was in this like dark little funk. But when I had woke up from that funk, it was like the fog was gone. And I just was like, man, maybe I want to wrestle. Like maybe I want to wrestle still. And I was like, the morning when I had this pep in my step, and then I was like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to wrestle, whatever. And then, a little bit of time went on, but it was still in the back of my mind. And then I'd start thinking about it more frequently. And then, I don't know, maybe about a month ago, in my head, I was just like, I got some unfinished business to do. I got some unfinished business to do. Because I'm just like, one thing is I've had enough time to kind of let things, one, let my body heal, two, let my mind heal, and just like kind of get far enough away from everything to kind of just have a new perspective. Right. And it's like, I've worked really hard to develop this skill set over the past 6 years. And I got pretty friggin' good at this thing. I got pretty good at this, and I have something to offer this world. This pro wrestling world, you know what I mean? Like the art that is pro wrestling, like I have something to offer that no one else on the planet has to offer right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just feel like this would be, I've never been afraid to walk away from something. And so that was my thought process, was like, yo, this, I learned a lot from this. This was a dope experience. I'm going to take this with me to the next endeavor. But then I was like, you know what? I might be walking away too soon. I don't think I'm going to be walking away from this. I want to give it another go. So I've been, I've been staying in shape, right? But I've been really picking up my training as of recently. One of the things that really kind of got me going was I started playing basketball. And I'd never really played basketball before, but I was like, I love watching basketball. I want to play. So I started playing pickup games of basketball. And then that competitive juice of mine started flowing. So then I was like in the park and shit, like D'ing people up and rebounding and getting super physical. And I was just like pushing my body, running and jumping. And I was like, ooh, I like this. And then, then I've been back in the, I've been training in the ring. So now I'm just like in this process now where I've been starting to reach out to other companies, kind of just letting it be known like, hey,
I'm back.
I'm just looking, like I'm back and I'm looking for a promotion that is looking for a young, ambitious, talented individual who wants an opportunity to showcase his abilities, but also wants to, I want to help a promotion, like I want to help all the people around me. Like I want to have great matches with people. Like I want to have great promos with people. Like I want to help bring the most out of people. And then, I want, in that process, like I'll be able to learn and get the most out of myself from them, hopefully. And I'm just looking for a place. I'm looking for a place who's looking to give that opportunity to me. So that's where I'm at right now.
Have you gotten any responses, or is it like the 5 phone calls and no one answers?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to have to do some more, some more emails, some more text messages, some more pestering. I'll just bug the shit out of people until they tell me to fuck off.
Sometimes that works. You never know.
Well, dude, this is the thing. And this is one of the blessed. So, you could look back on paper this past year and a half. You look at the car accident, you look at getting released, all the, bunch of stuff that happened in between that just like kind of made my life really tough, right? And you look at it on paper and you're like, this sucks. That's a shitty situation. But I look at it and it was like, yeah, it sucked, but also it was necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Necessary for growth there was some things that I needed to kind of confront as a human being that I was kind of neglecting because I was so head down, like trying to make it in the WWE. You know what I mean? Like I got away from enjoying the process and focusing on the outcome, the destination. And in that process, I started neglecting some of my personal, some of the personal sectors in my life that needed growth. Right. And I think this accident was because, like, listen, dude, that accident happens. You run it through a simulator a billion times, and there's one way where I'm here right now talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like, that's not on accident. Something much larger than me was at work that day. So there's nothing that can happen from this point that's gonna, like, I never really had I never really had too many cares to give. Never really been somebody that really worried about other people's opinion of myself. But after that, it's just like, yo, like I'm not even, like, I should be dead. Like, you think I care what you think about me?
Yeah.
Like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
Like, all this is like, this is a second chance. I mean, really, I'm like on my like 4th chance. So it's like, I'm like a cat. I've got 9 lives, but still, it's like, what do I care?
Yeah.
All I care about is just experiencing life. Hey, I'd like to keep wrestling. Would you like somebody of my ability and talent and work ethic? No? Okay. I'll just go to somebody else. Hey, hi, I'm Dan Matha, former WWE wrestler, aka Dorian Mack. I've been training for 6 years. I have this, and this to bring to the table. Would you like said talent? No? Okay, go to the next. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Plus, I got some, I've got some pretty cool things on the horizon as well. I actually scored my first movie role. Filming will take place in September. I actually just got the email saying that I'm cleared to talk about it. A lot of times they're like,
they're like, don't spoil it or anything.
Yeah. Well, you're not like, there's like, procedure and etiquette and on a set. But I literally got the email like an hour before we hopped on this thing saying like, hey, share this on your social, tag us, blah, 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 whatever, all that stuff. So
that's awesome.
I'm allowed to talk about it. So, it's cool, it's called No Vacancy. It's based on a book, actually. It'll be a cool little movie. It's based on this like reporter who, she was like up in New York City, had a big like news job up there, but then her mom gets really sick, she goes through divorce, she gets demoted, has to come down to like Leesburg, Florida during the 2008 market crash.
Oh wow.
So like she kind of gets like dogpiled with one thing after another. She comes down here, meets this dude Cecil, and then like Cecil kind of changes the way she sees life. I don't know how much I should I can give. I'll just give you that. It's a book. It's already out there. It's a book.
I was about to ask, are you playing Cecil or
no? I'm not playing
that?
Cecil. I don't have a major role. I'm playing one of the gangsters in the movie. And it's not a huge role, but it's my first role. So it's huge.
It's a start to lead something. You never know.
It's a huge to me. It's huge to me. No, dude, this is one of those things, dude. Just like I had that dream about wrestling, and wrestling, it went from moving in with my grandpa to making a phone call to becoming a car salesman to moving to Louisville to getting, a tryout to the WWE to like, to all the, right? That story, right? That's what this is, dude. This is the same thing. I met this lady about a year ago, my manager. She saw me, she believed in me, she worked with me, helped me out, we found an agent together, and then like we've been applying and we've been getting auditions. Like I've had probably like 20-30 auditions and I haven't heard shit back. This was the first one that I've heard something back. So like this was the first one. So like this is the momentum.
And then behind the scenes, you're just karate chopping and exciting. That's just gonna be your signature move now.
I got a sweet roundhouse, bro. That's my go-to.
Well, I'll ask you one final question. For someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you got to get real introspective with yourself. You got to ask yourself hard questions, and you got to be honest with yourself. And you're going to find that everything that is not going the way you want it to in your life is your fault. And the sooner that you admit that, the sooner you can start overcoming. And then once you do that, that becomes like an invigorating process, right? Like that's empowering. People think it's the opposite, right? It's like demoralizing. No, you now empower yourself, because what happens is when you tell yourself, when you're honest with yourself about everything in your life being your fault, whether it's true or not, sometimes things happen that are out of our control, but it's still your fault. in the sense that there's plenty of things you could have done to avoid it or mitigate the damage that said thing could have happened, and you didn't. So when you claim ownership of all the negatives that happened in your life, what you do is now that accountability means I created this issue to get into this situation. Now I can create the solution to get out of this situation. And once you do that, then it's just being disciplined every day, getting up and just taking action towards whatever goal it is that you're going towards. And action isn't a plan. It's not a big elaborate plan. It's not a planner and a schedule and a notebook and all that stuff, which those tools can help. By all means, use them if they do help, but they also can paralyze you. A lot of times you need to get out of your head and get in your body. Quit thinking, start doing. A lot of us, we think too much. We're just, we're in our heads. I'm guilty of it too. And I think, with technology, with our phones and stuff, it's very easy to get in our heads and not be present. The key is to be present, be here right now. And then you just have to get ruthless. You got to get ruthless with what in your life gets you closer to where you want to be and what is in the way. And anything that's in the way has to go. And if you can do those things, everything else will take care of itself.
I totally agree with all of that. Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thanks, my man. I appreciate you having me on here.